Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet Zoo. So we are starting immediately with a speed build and we're going to be working on the right side of our brand new entrance. And for this I wanted to create something like a kind of like a Grecian / classical walkthrough so that people could have a nice little woodland walk continuing that theme that we have with the left hand side with the peafowl habitat, which I have made a few changes to but nothing really worth showing you. I can do like a little tour of the main entrance once I've actually finished all of that, just little bits and pieces, and I've also redeveloped the roof of the train station to make a few changes there. So I wanted to continue that theme where there's a nice little forested walkway all the way through to some exhibits, and we're going to have 6 exhibits. I'm not quite sure what we're going to put in there, and I've been thinking actually I'm going to do a whole like brand new animal rejig where we maybe get rid of, release, sell all of the animals in the zoo and do a complete redevelopment, because I have been noticing a lot of our animals are on like low welfare or we're getting a bit of inbreeding because of, once again, as I say in every episode, don't have time to manage the park itself because I'm spending too much time building. We're in like year 30 now, and I think actually overall I must be in like year 33 or 35 or something. It's just so much time spent doing the builds, not enough time spent enjoying the park itself. Anyway, so we wanted to make like a nice little theme, and I wanted to get everything in nice and tight on this actual build. So first of all, I built the bulk of the exhibit itself, and then we're going to design an area for it to fit into. So we're going to have 3 of these temple-like structures that are part of a bigger ruined temple. Now I'm not going to go all out and create something really elaborate. It's still going to be pretty basic, but I did have an idea that I wanted to follow through and bring to fruition. Something really quick that you guys can see. So this one is going to be a slightly shorter episode than the latest few, but you're still going to get a nice bit of detail. And I did actually spend quite a lot of time on this one, and it's come out really nice. I'm really quite happy with it. We used some of the new pieces from the aquatic pack, which has been out a long time, but I've not actually had a lot of time to figure it out and explore it, because you know there's so much in the game, so many different tools and things to build with. So yeah, here we are. We're just resizing and slowly edging things into place so that it looks like one complete piece and there's no like things jutting out and imperfections in it. And I think we just about get it. The problem is, the closer you get to the exhibits, the more difficult it is to grab something if you need to reposition it. Unless you actually remove the exhibit itself, which is what I ended up doing because things just became far too difficult to grab hold of. But I'm really liking how this one's looking so far, and the idea I have is that we have this structure that's raised so people can walk up onto it and they can walk around, view these exhibits, and there's like a fountain, some nice trees. We use mulch, and I think it's the cypress trees that are quite tall and slim. And then we throw down a few bricks and things like that just to make it look like there's this ruined Grecian temple that is part of our zoo. Really happy with it. I'm not quite sure what animals we're going to put in here. I don't know if we're going to put insects in. We might go with lizards or snakes. Maybe snakes. We could make it like a Medusa theme or something. I don't know. So I was quite happy with the initial top part, and then it was just a case of working out what I wanted to do with the bottom. And I actually found these simple limestone slabs actually really work, and they form a pretty important part of the rest of the build, making a nice trim all the way around part of the exhibits, mainly the internal and external structure of the actual temple itself. The roof, however, was a little bit of a sticking point. I tried a few different things and none of them seemed to work, so the thought that I eventually settled on was to give them like a top trim and maybe just put some overgrown grass on there or some moss, just to give it that extra dimension and a nice feel to it. We did play around with some of the ornate fascias that come in this pack with the classical architecture, and they eventually do become part of the front of the build, which I thought looked really nice. These are us putting them in now. Played around with a few different things, but nothing really stood out apart from the first thing that we went for, which is often always the case. Like I'll mess around with a few different things and then settle on the first thing that I picked out. But I'm really starting to get comfortable with things, and we've got a few new builds planned. In the next episode we're actually going to be redeveloping our African penguin habitat, and the focus is going to be solely on that habitat, and I'm really looking forward to showing you guys what I've done. It was a build that I put a lot of like time and effort into, so I'm really happy with the outcome as well. And I knew that the African penguins were getting quite stressed. It was quite a small habitat, it was quite cramped, there weren't a lot of spaces for them to go and hide in, just that tiny little shelter that we'd built them. And because the population of that habitat itself was growing, it was probably about time to make it a bigger area and give them a nice little few things to explore, but also equip it with a few more viewing areas for the guests. And I'm really excited to show you that. That's probably going to be coming out in a week or two. There may be another mini-sode in between as well, as I start planning for a second series of Planet Zoo franchise mode, which is going to be a New York style city park, which I'm quite looking forward to getting to grips with. So we'd put our path in here. This was going to be the raised section. I did toy with the idea of having an extra raised section in the middle, but we took that out very quickly. Put in our duplicates of our exhibits and then started putting in the flooring. Now, because I'd messed around a little bit with the grid pattern and the grid size, this got a little bit imperfect, but we did manage to make it work eventually, and I'm happy with the outcome. There's a little bit of clipping with these limestone slabs, but we have worked it out and the clipping isn't actually too bad. We could hide it with some grasses or something like that. This middle area is now going to form the basis of a fountain, and we're going to be using the waterfall from the aquatic pack, which has kind of got this like limestone block, and it's just a huge, I think it's like they come in like 2x2, 4x4 and 2x8 sections, and it's just a waterfall flowing. And I think it's great. It's such a good addition, and it's something that I think the devs needed to put into the game, because you spend so much time creating waterfalls and messing around with those tiny little sections of it and getting it right, and sometimes you have some floating in midair just to make the water work and look like it's flowing effectively, and then you have to rotate bits and pieces here, there and everywhere, and it can be a bit of a nightmare to organize. So to have just like this stock section of flowing water is a huge help, and it's going to benefit a lot of builders like myself who haven't quite mastered certain aspects of the game, and anyone who's brand new to the game. So here we are, putting those trims back in place and just lining them all up. It did become a bit difficult once again because of the way that I'd messed around with the grid and the size of each grid that these pieces are placed on, but we did manage to get it working, and I think it does look fantastic. It may lack a few details that we could put in and improve, like on the corners we could put some of these little bases that we've got on the exhibits themselves just to flesh it out a little bit more, but I was relatively happy with it being quite a smooth curvature all the way around. Well, smooth squared off edge all the way around. And once we actually put in what we're putting in here, which is going to be like mulch, some statues and some trees and plants and bushes and stuff, you barely notice the fact that it looks like this. And I didn't really think... I think there can be a time when you're making a build where you can put too much into something, if you get me. And you like spend so much time focusing on those intricate little details that the payoff isn't as big as you would expect. And it can be quite underwhelming when you put in a lot of time and effort and then look at it from a distance and go, ah, well, that was a little bit of a waste of time. So the main details are here. We're putting in our cypress trees now. I think they're cypress trees. And then we're going to put some mulch down, and we may come back and put a little trim in just to differentiate between path and plant. But I was pretty happy with how things were. We had our usual issues with the barrier placement for this non-habitat barrier where we put water in, but we managed to overcome them anyway, and we're covering up all of that like poking through stuff with mulch anyway, so it's not too bad. And that's the waterfall, which I was really quite happy with. We put in some lily pads and everything else looked pretty good. The last thing to do in this bit was to mulch down, and we'll put a hippo on that fountain, kind of roaring at people as they walk past, which I think would be a nice finishing touch. You may remember a few episodes ago we did build a pygmy, well, that was a long time ago. It was one of our first ones. We built a pygmy hippo habitat, and they've vanished from the zoo. They've not been seen since I demolished the entrance area. But we will be bringing them back with a brand new habitat, and I'm quite looking forward to putting that back into action again. I think I'm going to put them next to the penguins and like continue a theme of that build all the way around, which I think would be really nice. Time to put in the base now. And again, we're just going with these thicker limestone slabs, sinking them into the ground to form a lovely trim going all the way around the base and to give it an extra dimension in the build itself. Again, it took a little bit of time to get this one correct, but got there in the end, and pretty happy with how this is looking so far. And once we get those final finishing touches and last minute details in, I think it's going to be a really nice build. I toyed with the idea of putting in some archways or something as they come up the stairs, but again we just left it open because I thought that still looked pretty nice. I have just noticed while recording the audio for this that some of that little lip there is a little bit off center, and that's going to really annoy me, so I'm going to have to come and fix that before we record the next episode. So we covered this one over. This is where I was thinking about putting in archways, but I think at the end we just left it as this slab here because nothing seemed to fit or work quite right. Nevertheless, all that was really left to do is put in some pillars to give it a little bit more of an accent, and then finish off with some trees and creating a forest area for people to walk through. And then we can consider what animals we're going to put in these exhibits. I think we will probably put in some snakes. I haven't actually decided yet, so even by the end of this video we probably won't have anything in. But you're seeing now the kind of thing that we're going for, and I do think it looks really nice. There is one thing that I would like to do, and that's terraform the area behind it, just to make kind of like a little hilly region or a bit of a mountain. We may then put in a waterfall, but right now I'm not too concerned. I'm just going to terraform it and finish it off, because the area behind it isn't our concern today. So we put in some more marble statues, the proud lion, the dodo, 2 deer and a gorilla, and the hippo standing proud on his waterfall. I may rotate that so that it's staring straight down the barrel as people come up. And then we started putting in our plants. So threw some moss on the top of this. It's a little bit overcrowded, so we may take a couple of pieces off, and then we just spread it around the path, walking all the way around. And then some hanging moss coming off the exhibits themselves. And these are the kind of finishing touches that really make a build stand out. Again, I'm not the best in the world, I'm going to put that out there right now, but certain things like putting in grasses and moss and some hanging things, even just a couple, can really finish a build off and really make them look good. I do watch a lot of very good Planet Zoo YouTubers, and as much as I would love to be classed in that category at some point, I am not, and I probably never will be. But I like to figure out that, you know, you don't often see a lot of YouTubers who grow and develop their skills starting from being able to only do very basic stuff. Seems like all of the big ones seem to know what they're doing from the off, and I don't think that's a fair representation, because everybody started somewhere. Everybody wasn't amazing at some point, and I'm not amazing, but I really like what I do, and I really like learning the game and discovering how you can use different pieces to create a really effective build, and I like sharing that with people. And that's what this channel's about, basically. You will see me grow as a builder and a YouTuber, and hopefully you yourself will also grow as a builder in Planet Zoo just by watching these speed builds and learning a little bit about the things and the techniques that I use to make things work. Because while Planet Zoo is a great game, it doesn't have a great deal of hand-holding when it comes to the creative side of things. Pathing is a nightmare, some of the build tools are a little bit clunky and difficult to figure out, and it can be very daunting. It was certainly daunting for me when I first started playing, and I think it's the same with Planet Coaster. The great thing about Planet Zoo is some of the mechanics are a lot more forgiving. Like, you can bankrupt yourself very quickly on Planet Zoo from only having a couple of exhibits that eventually stop making money, and it gets very difficult very quickly. Planet Zoo, on the other hand, as long as you've got some money rolling in, you'll eventually make enough to be able to develop as and when you please, which I think is a really nice thing to be able to do. The game is a lot more relaxing and less stressful than Planet Coaster, I think. Anyway, finishing touches here now is just putting in some plants and some rubble. I know the rubble doesn't quite match the limestone, but I'm not too bothered about that. So we just filled out more rubble and then started putting in some bushes, trees and plants. I really like the gorilla here peering through the reeds. I think that looks really cool. And then the deer, I put in a couple more trees around here to make it look like they were hiding behind a few things. And then just filled in this area with some bushes and grasses. I really like some of the larger patches of grass. Put in a couple of rocks as well just to finish it all off. And then it was time to decorate this lion enclosure, this lion area. Put in a nice tree that looks like it's been ravaged by wind and grown in a certain direction. I think that looks really cool. And then a few more bushes dotted about just to finish it all off and give it that extra pop, because there was a lot of white here, and I thought putting in some dashes of green and some lovely little colours from the plants and flowers would just give it that extra pop of colour and contrast for the rest of the build. The dodo, we kind of left with a little bit more space, a couple of trees, and then that finishes that off. The final thing to do was decorate the entrance area, so once again we ran these cypress trees up all the way along the path to create a lovely little walkway right back to the main entrance of the zoo. And I think we may bring this path further in and have it link up with the path to the train station, which people are now starting to use. Really exciting. But unfortunately, when they get off the train, they don't have anything else to do because there's nothing there for them to see. They kind of actually have been going there, dropping off their litter, and then getting back on the train and going. Anyway, it's time for a little showcase. So here we are. Day is just breaking, and I took the opportunity to light up the space a little bit. I will incorporate these little like walkway lights into the build a little bit more so that they look like they're part of the architecture. The light will dim a little bit as we do that, but I think it'll look a lot better with less harsh lighting. The other thing we'll do is the ones around the inner side where the mulch and the trees are, is once we put those barriers in, or the little lips, we'll incorporate those floor lights into that build itself as well. So people have started coming in to see the new exhibits. We went with the red-eyed tree frog, a poison arrow frog, lesser Antillean iguana, and 3 different types of snakes. The names escape me. But people have come in. We've changed our actual donation boxes to make them look a colour that matches the rest of the build. We do have to hide the walls that we've put up to block off certain viewing areas of the exhibits, and we'll do that with some more limestone wall panels and things. You can also see in the distance there the clock tower that I put on the train station. That's something for another day when I do a full tour of the zoo. Our hippo there in his waterfall, happy as anything. Lots of people coming in, some donations, people reading the advertising material and educational material, and I'm just very happy with this. I think this looks really cool, and the way the light catches it and the shadows move as the sun moves across the horizon, I just think it looks like a really cool build. And here is our finished, or just about finished, entrance, where you can see the developments we've made on the train station and certain other buildings. You'll also notice we've put in the Indian peafowl, a little shed for them to sleep in. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you for the next episode of Planet Zoo.